Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Lifestyle Mastery, and I'm excited to have Mustafa Khanwala, who's the founder of Mishipay. Mishipay empowers shoppers to scan and pay for their shopping with their smartphones rather than wasting time queuing at the checkout. And Mustafa has done his master's from UCL. Welcome to the show, Mustafa.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So you've had quite a journey. You're Indian who lived in Middle East, then moved to UK. You did a couple of projects like Desi Home Food. But how did you get in this crazy world of startups? And what led you to start Mishipay?
Yeah, I think as an engineer, you already have a good start, right, at doing your own thing because you can build things. For me, I've always wanted to do my own. Like my father and uncle started their business 35 years ago in Kuwait, then had to go away when Saddam invaded Kuwait and then come back and restart. For me, it was always very inspirational. I wanted to do my own thing, but I never quite had the right idea. Desi Home Food was what I started as I was finishing at the University of Manchester, but then I came for my master's to London in UCL, and that sort of fizzled out. But it was still a good idea. I still think there's merit to it. Sort of like bringing the dabba wala concept to the UK, right?
Yeah.
Regular meals that are delivered, and a few others have since then done it. Some of them are doing well. I really think it's a good idea, but it probably wasn't for me. I wasn't the right person to do it. That was one really good advice I got from people, that you need to work on the things that you really feel like you're the best to do it, and the kind of things that you can't not do it, right? That was important for me. So in the meantime, until that happened, I kept writing down every idea I had. I was at 23 and Mishipe was idea number 24. It was also at a good timing because I was just about to finish my masters at UCL. I had a few graduate scheme offers, Goldman, Barclays, KPMG. So I had that security if I wanted to stay in the UK with those guys. But lucky for me, I rejected the offers because when I built the first prototype, I realized this is real. It's not just in my head. You can just scan the barcode of an item, pay for that item, and leave the store, and provide theft security against theft through RFID or other means. And so I decided, okay, let's start, right? And that's how I got into it. I was lucky that during UCL, I participated as a volunteer in a few other programs like, Techstars and a few others to meet some founders, understand one of my professors at UCL is a business angel himself. So connected me with a few other business angels, and the graduate entrepreneur visa in the UK was another big help, right? That through UCL, I could present my business plan, pitch, and get that sponsorship of the university to get a visa to stay in the UK. So that's a big thing because if that was not there, I probably would have taken one of the jobs, right, just to stay. But luckily, I had that opportunity. I could stay and start to build the business. A year later, a year and a half later, we had our first equity investment with a pre-seed. But again, before that equity investment came in, we won two awards from UCL and University of Manchester in their startup competitions, and that brought the first like 30,000 pounds of external money in. It was grant money we won through awards, so it didn't come with any kind of equity requirements. So that was also another really good thing, but helped us get started. So I often say, like, without those early validation, I think, like, that you get, because oftentimes when you're just starting, you need validation from customers. We have to work in retail, not easy to get customers to use your product. But through the university, we won these awards. Through the University College London, we also got introduced to the Dandy Lab, which was the first store that we went live in. That was in Spitalfields Market, and it was a pop up. It was temporary, but we got a chance to put our technology in there, try it out, get some videos, get a few investors to take a look at it, and again prove that this is possible.
Quite interesting, because I also studied at UK, and so I know the entrepreneurship visa works. So you need to renew it every 2 years. Was that?
So the first thing that we got was the graduate entrepreneur visa from the from UCL,
Yeah.
but within a year of that, normally you would have to renew it. I think you get it for 2 years, and I don't know if you can renew it further because by then you have to move on to any of the normal entrepreneurship visa, which you can get through having more than a certain amount of investment in your company. But what I did was a year later, I applied for the exceptional talent visa,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
and that has no strings attached. It's 5 years in one go, and you can do your startup, and you don't have to raise a certain amount of money,
Correct.
or get only certain types of investors to invest. So we were again fortunate that I was able to get that visa, and 3 years later apply for my ILR and then become a citizen. But that first graduate entrepreneur visa was very important, because in that 1 year we were able to get more of this validation, win some of these awards, get some backing from people who then provided the references needed to get that exceptional talent visa.
Correct, correct. No, interesting. I think now it's called Global Talent Visa, but
Yeah.
you talked about you did 24 different ideas, but how did you get that sort of validation that creating like a mobile checkout solution would be the right fit?
Yeah, it's tough, because I oftentimes give the same advice to others looking to start something, that when you have a new idea, you're looking at the end vision, but you have to have those first two steps, right, of how to start. And this is another advice I got from a good VC. He used to be at the time the head of HP Tech Ventures, a man called Vitaly Golom, and he said that when you raise money, and he was talking about it from a fundraising perspective, you're raising money at when you're at point A to get to B. But when you get to B, you need to agree with those investors what B is, right? Whether it's a certain number of users, it's a certain amount of revenue, or any other metric that you use to validate, to then get to C, right? So he was like, you just need that 2 steps forward. And I've learned that over time as well, that it might be a 10,000 step journey, but and you don't need to know all 10,000 steps towards the end goal, but you need to know the next two at any point in time, right?
Right.
Because let's say tomorrow I want to build a flying car, but I don't know the first thing about it. I don't know the first and the second step to start. It's impossible for me to do that, right? So a lot of those ideas that I had, some of them were good, but I didn't know how to start. I didn't have the prerequisite knowledge. Would have to learn a lot. Would have to do something different with Mishipay, and what I had in mind with ScanPay Go. I knew enough about mobile apps and coding to start with that first prototype by myself. I knew enough about RFID through projects I'd done at University of Manchester to learn about it, and to say, okay, this is how it can be utilized, because I'd seen applications that PhD students were building for farms and for other things. So I thought surely for retail it can be used. And so I knew how to get started, right? How to have that first app, and the security verification, and then what to do if it's inside the first store, right, to deploy. So that was my validation at the beginning, to know that I could do it. By the time we got to that second step, I already had the next 2 steps in mind, right? How to get the first pilot with a major retailer, and the amount of money we'd need to raise to get that.
Correct. And you've raised close to around $11 million. And the market has been a little tough in the last couple of years, especially in the last 2 years. What advice you would give to founders who listen to the podcast on what do they need to do in order to raise the first round of funding?
Yeah, I mean, by now we've raised about 15 million pounds,
No,
so that number is going up.
it's going up. Yeah.
And the most recent one is now, but yeah, it's been really tough to raise in the last couple of years, right? No doubt, the market's changed a lot, but I think for us, we've never found it that easy to raise, right? Because we're working towards a very big market, very tough market with in-store retail, not easy to deploy, not easy to roll out. So when you go after a market, you need to understand what's your unique advantage there, right? That's what I would tell founders, that fundraising, sure, it's a means to get your goals done, but first understand and establish what those goals are, right? What is the product you're selling, into what market? And if you have the validation from either the product working at the beginning, and then raising the money to get it to the market, from there, after the product and market, the first level of product market fit, raising the next money to get to that next goal, right? So the same advice that Vitaly had given us at the time in Slush, that was in 2016, at the first Slush, I would give to new founders, right? That when raising money, understand what the money is being raised for. So for you to get to point A to B, what is B, if you can define it on a basis of users, revenue, whatever metric is important to your business, And then at that point, what money would you need to raise to get to C, and what is C? If you can at least answer these questions, then you can still go out to the market and raise, right? Not at the same valuations as you used to, not in the same ease or speed as you used to, but there is still money out there if you can answer these questions and you have, a genuinely good business to fund.
Correct. And obviously, I want to talk about AI, because a lot of people believe that, especially in retail, people will lose their jobs in AI. But where do you see the future of, retail technology evolving, and how does Mishipay fit into that vision?
So I've been hearing this, right, for 9, 10 years that retail is going away and high street retail. And it's not, right? Even through the pandemic, when you saw online sales really go up rapidly, since then they fell, right? And you start to see this happy medium. In most places around the world, in-store retail is still more than 80%, right? 80, 85%. In places where online is still catching up, in-store retail is more than 90%. And I still think it will continue to be a very high percentage, right, of the total retail sales. Certain segments of the market are moving definitely much more online than they do in store, like electronics, for example, right? People buy their electronics online, but they still visit the stores to check out the electronics, and that's where Best Buy has done or at least did an amazing job, right, with converting their stores to be great places to experience the product, and then if you want, you can go buy it online. They don't mind, right? That very famous case study that's there, right? That they went from making a 2 billion loss to a 2 billion profit because they realized all the other electronics brands use their stores as a place to market the product, and they don't mind if after that you go and you buy it from Amazon because they're still selling their product, but the one who suffers is Best Buy. So they realized that if they charge rent for the space and have that shop in shop model, they could make a lot of money, utilize their great retail real estate, and people, their footfall was still strong and still continues to be strong, right? So I think there's going to be the evolution of what technologies and what you do inside the store, right? Like we saw from traditional cash registers to self checkouts to scan and go and computer vision checkouts. You will see these evolving, but the value of having that space for people to go and experience the product in real life will continue to be there.
Correct. And you've expanded to multiple countries. What lessons have you learned while scaling a startup internationally, and how do you look at which market to go after once you've taken another home market?
Yeah, we actually did that first as a mistake when we started too early to go into places. Now, in hindsight, it's a mistake, but when you're in there just starting out, you want to sign whatever customer is ready to sign with you, right? As long as the
True.
customer is correct, you don't care if you're based in the UK and the customer is in Germany or Austria or France. You want that chance to pilot with a large retailer your technology, because that gives further validation of what you're doing. But it's certainly harder, right, when you go out to these different markets, especially in Europe, where people look at Europe as a block, but each country has a different language, has a different culture.
True.
Locally, when you need to hire salespeople and then manage those salespeople and manage their payroll and their needs, it becomes really, really difficult, right? And at the early days, you don't want to create that. So as much as possible, I would say that delay expanding to various markets if you can, if
Okay.
your home market is strong enough. But once you are expanding, the thing that's helped us out a lot is expanding always with an anchor customer,
Okay.
right? So when we first went to the US, we started hiring the US team after we had our first large anchor customer in the US.
Okay.
And then said, okay, use this as a reference to sign more people. Same thing when we expanded to Dubai. Same thing when we added Saudi Arabia as a market. One large anchor customer that then you hire around and then you grow, right? Something new that we're trying now that our product is really well known, and you have good case studies, you have an understanding of how to evaluate product market fit without actually being in that market with your product. Now you can start to consider distribution, right? Because distributors who will take a significant revenue share percentage or buy from you at a certain price and sell in the local market can be a great way to expand, right?
Yeah.
But they won't take on a product until they know that they can sell that product. And that requires you to be a certain level or achieve a certain level of maturity, right? Because as a distributor, let's say I have a sales team of 10 people, that number of hours I have to dedicate to new clients is limited, right?
Yeah.
And if I put your product in there before I know I can sell it, I'm wasting the time of my salespeople. I'm not getting the revenue from that product, so what's the point? So that's why you see, products like Microsoft's and SAP's and Oracle that have such good distribution networks because those distributors and integration partners know that it will sell,
Yeah.
right? They know
True.
what they can do with that product in that market, and that's how they push it out.
Hmm. And you talked about having an anchor client before you enter a new market. So is it like the founder ensuring that he gets that client or the VP sales? How do you allocate that time frame out of somebody's agenda so that you are able to capture that market share?
Yeah. So for sure, it has to be the founder's time, right? That
Right.
is that is dedicated to it. That if the founder is doing the majority of sales,
Hmm.
or leading the sales team. If you have a separate VP of sales, let's say you're a very technical founder, then yes, that sales head will manage that, and they have to do that. It comes through two ways. The way I see it, either inbound, right, from a new market, you get an inbound lead, which is a good customer. So you still talk to them, right? So when you get inbound leads, you don't ignore them as a startup. You talk to them, you understand, and if you get more and more inbound leads from one market, that's a first idea that okay, why is it that from this market we're getting a lot of inbound leads? Let's explore it a little. Let's do an event there. Let's go see there as a discovery to see what's going on, right? And that's when you have a completely new client. In retail, though, there is another opportunity because most retailers are in multiple countries. So
Hmm.
if you have a large retailer that wants to expand your product into their multiple countries, then they will take you with them into a new country, right? And when you have that retailer stores in a new country, now you can just keep it to that and say, okay, we're making money in this country from this retailer expanding us there. But that's the other way that you can explore to see that, okay, just because we have this retailer, does it mean that others are starting to get attracted to what we're doing?
Right. Correct. And when it comes
So the
to
best thing in a market when you approach, in our case in retail, is if
yeah.
you can tell them, let me take you to one of my stores that's actually live.
Hmm.
Come check out the technology in real life, try it out yourself, and then tell me if you want to sign up.
Hmm. Correct. Correct. And especially when it comes to new products, what's your tracking process to determine, what's the success of these new products, and how do you get to decide, you want to shelve out these products and not work on them?
So we have a matrix we use, right, that operates on a few things. So the two dimensions of it are number one internally, right? Like, can we use existing technology to build this product? Can we use our existing teams to build this product? Can we use, and do we have an advantage versus the competitors? And then how quickly can that product reach 1 million ARR for us?
Okay.
Right? Then there is the external factors that we consider on the second dimension is that this product amongst which of our existing retailers can be an upsell for us,
Okay.
right? That the existing retailers who already have one or more of our products, will they also buy this?
Oh, okay. Correct.
And if there is enough existing customers who could buy it and then show an interest in it, so we go out to start from early conversations. If they show an interest in it, and the other factors of it being easy for us to build with the existing team without making too much extra investment before we start to see a return, and the ability to scale it to $1 million a year, then we start to work on it and start the first few pilots and exploring.
Correct. And do you think you should have separate business teams, like sales teams, marketing teams, product teams for each different product?
We do not at the
Okay.
moment, right?
Okay.
So I don't think so because not until you are at a much larger scale, right? So
Okay.
if what you're building, and that's the part that our matrix will not cover, right, is something completely different from what we're doing today, right? Cannot be done with the existing technology or cannot be sold to the existing retailers. That wouldn't fit our matrix at all, right? So we don't even look at those ideas we talk about them. They're good for discussion, good for discovery, but they are a distraction for us, right? Because we wouldn't really be able to work on them. We really wouldn't be able to have an advantage. So that's why I think your existing salespeople should be able to sell this product. Now, let's say if this product starts to become really big, right, and the customer segments for them are really different.
Yeah.
The personas you talk to inside the customer is really different. The ICPs. Then it starts to make sense to have different sales team, different business team, different delivery teams for it.
Okay, got it. And when it comes to making decisions, how do you get to decide, which decisions have to be made fast and which decisions should take their own time to be made?
I use the Eisenhower matrix most of the time,
Okay.
right? So I use the important and urgent, important not urgent, urgent but not important, and neither important nor urgent to sort of segment into four. And important and urgent is like do it now, and important but not urgent is like date it now. So just put a calendar time to actually work on this deeply. Urgent and not important is like get it delegated to someone for whom it is important, and neither urgent nor important is like delete it now, right? Because
Oh,
it's a waste of time and it's distracting you. We don't necessarily delete. Sometimes we just keep them in like a sort of archive until it becomes one of the others. But yeah, I think that's a very useful matrix to try to apply generally. Right now, maintaining discipline with that is really difficult because those things which are urgent, even if they're not important, just because they're so noisy, can take your attention, right? And you decide to focus on them and get them done, but that might not be the most important thing for you to do right now.
right, right.
Our CFO, who's also my wife, has a very good thing that she oftentimes says, right? That think about it, and she thinks from a CFO's perspective, but the work should always be done in the cheapest way possible, right? So think about like the person doing that job has to be the cheapest to do that job,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So let's say if you're making a sale, let's say if I'm making a $1 million sale, right, with a salesperson who's paid $100,000, that's amazing, right? But
Yeah.
if that $1 million sale is possible with a salesperson who's doing $50,000, then that's something that's worth considering, right? Or maybe your minimum for making that sale is $250,000, but you are considering that this is the minimum, right? Which is like the way that you think about getting an assistant as well as a CEO, because you might actually be able to manage your own calendar, right? But should you be spending that 10 hours a week in managing your calendar, or actually at the cost that you are to the company? Or should someone who has a lower cost to the company actually be spending that 20, 30 hours of their time to manage that calendar?
Got it. And how do you ensure that size of the urgency and speed within your team without, they taking a lot of your time and that funding pressure?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's an ongoing challenge. I wouldn't say that I have conquered it or that I have done very good and I don't have that problem anymore. Certainly,
Yeah.
it's a problem. The team taking their time, and it's something that you, if you try to rush too much, you could actually make sometimes the wrong decision because you don't get the full context of what's going on. So
Yeah.
as a CEO, you need to get context, get it quickly, and then make a decision, right? So someone has, let's say, a half an hour meeting to explain what's the situation, give you the clues of what to do, and then you have to make a decision on it when sometimes you might not have been involved in it, right? That's why I still believe fully that as a founder, as a CEO, you have to be involved in all the important areas, right?
Right.
Doesn't mean you have to be running them yourself or you have to be executing there yourself, but you have to at least be in the know, right, of what's going on, be in the detail, because then when someone comes to you, you can get the context really easily, right? That's what saves time. Is that if you're spending a considerable amount of your time getting involved in all these places, right, getting involved in marketing, in HR, in sales, in product and technology roadmap, client specific integration, and what's going on with every one of the clients, and what's happening, then when someone comes to you with a problem in that area, you might not know everything, But if they spend 10 minutes giving you some context, you're getting that context.
Right. Mm. Correct. And
Because if it's completely out of the blue, it's very difficult for you to get that context. You will need to spend, 1 hour, 2 hours to first get the context, then make the decision. And that's where you might end up spending a lot of time. Because if you do it only when that happens, then you're not making the decision quickly. Or if you do make it quickly, you're probably making the wrong decision.
mm,
But generally, also, I agree with the principle that, the wrong decision is better than no decision.
wasn't okay. Correct.
Yeah, yeah, better. Wrong decision is better than indecision. Almost always, I believe, startups die in the land of maybe,
Yeah.
right? Because whether that may be a maybe from your customers, a maybe from your investors, a maybe from talent you're trying to hire, just being stuck in the middle actually is the thing you need to try to avoid, right? Customers who suck up a lot of time and are not making a decision of yes or no, it's much better for them to make a decision of a no to your product, because that gives you better feedback. That tells you, okay, why they could be either the wrong customer, or you might have the wrong product, or you might be missing something. Talent that wants to join you should make a decision quickly on them. They should make a decision quickly on you, right? As much as possible. You still have your processes to follow. Same thing with investors, right? What ends up actually being a big time sink is, and what makes rounds take so long, is because you're dealing so much time with so many investors who are actually have no interest in investing in you, right? But they're
Yeah.
sucking up a lot of your time, and you want them to come to a decision. So I really respect those customers, investors, talent who actually come back to say, look, it's a no, but we're giving you a quick no.
Correct. And but how about hiring a wrong hire? Can it not damage
It
you in the,
can,
yeah.
it can, but that's why you also fire quickly,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So I agree with the, if you can, then yes, hire slowly, fire quickly, but it's really difficult, right? Because when you try to hire slowly as well, oftentimes you lose some of the good candidates, right?
Mm,
Because it's a competitive market. Really good candidate is typically interviewing in multiple places, and you spend a lot of time in hiring them, they'll be gone.
correct. Correct.
So I'm not saying that you don't follow your process. Let's say if your process is, you know, 10 hours of work overall, try to see if you can do that 10 hours within 2 weeks
Mm,
rather than 2 months.
mm, correct.
But I say this, and we for sure have taken sometimes too long to make some hires. We for sure have taken, wrong hires even after spending all that time.
Mm,
So the way I see it, like shortening the hiring cycle, for us at least, has not led to worse hires or a worse hire percentage.
okay. No, I totally get that. But what's been your biggest lesson when it comes to hiring for roles for which you have not hired for before? And, what works, what doesn't work when you're looking at somebody you haven't spoken, you don't know that person well.
So I never had a full-time job before starting Mishipay, right? So
Yeah.
every role I've hired is the first time I've ever hired that role,
Yeah.
and so every one of them was that kind of a learning. Typically, this is where you go to your mentors, right? You keep a circle of advisors. It doesn't have to be formalized into an advisory board, as long as, but after a certain level of maturity, I for sure think it's worth having some advisors that you give certain money and options to,
Okay.
and try to always keep both, so that there is some kind of a commitment from you to them and them to you, where you have, like, weekly half an hour kind of meetings. And you will outgrow some of these advisors, right? They might be great 1 year, and after 1 year you realize they're not giving you anything new, so you go away and you find new ones. And that's good. That's the evolution, right, of a founder, a CEO. But if you have the circle of advisors, that's the best place to ask, right? First and foremost, because these are people who would have been in your industry, in the kind of market you're trying to deal with, or have been previous founders in your markets. So in our case, retail tech or payments tech, and they would know this, right? So you ask them those kinds of questions. That who do you think is the right next hire for me in sales? If I'm looking to hire, let's say, a new head of architecture, what should I look for? what are the kind of roles that they should have had in the past if I want to hire someone who's taking that job for the first time, because I don't want to end up taking someone on too expensive and I want them to learn on the role. Those are questions that you would typically ask this circle of advisors. Your investors should also be a good place for you to go for this,
Yeah.
because typically they would have, if you have VC investors, they would have other startups in their portfolio who are hopefully one or two stages ahead of you,
Yeah.
right? And so have just been through that, and they can tell you about some of those, easy pitfalls to avoid. And then the actual hiring process itself will teach you, because as you interview through those candidates, as you look through CVs, you'll learn, okay, maybe something's not right in the JD. You need to change a few words around to look for the right people. So that's another place these days, you can get really good insights from LinkedIn and all these other tools to understand, typical salary levels, typical experience levels, what are the prerequisites for certain roles.
Mm. Got it. And you've been working on Mishipay for more than 10 years now. How does your leadership, has it evolved since you started Mishipay?
We'd not be around if it hadn't evolved. That's for sure.
Yeah.
We've been working at Mishipur more than 9 years now, right? 10-year anniversary is next year
Oh,
in
nice.
August, when we incorporated in August. We are about 6.5, 7 years, 7 years on from the first major retailer to take on our product as a pilot. And during that time, there's been, a lot of changes in me personally. I've lost a lot of my hair that I had at the time. Physically changes, big changes. I've gained 25 kgs and lost 25 kgs and gained them again and then lost them again. That's another thing, right? General physical health, and that keeping up with it is really difficult through the many times that you evolve. And I've also tried a lot of things. So I've tried routine, right, which I've got as advice from a lot of advisors, and for a while I also tried on some of these executive coaching guys, and they have some great advice. But for me, for some reason, I've never been able to work very well with a very fixed routine, right? Like wake up at a certain time, do these certain things, then start your day, then end your day at a certain time. Whenever I have followed routine, I've realized, like, business has not gone that well, but I've generally been very happy, right? But the other way around, whenever it's been extreme chaos and no fixed routine, days starting sometimes at 7, days ending sometimes at 1 a.m., and a mix of all these with travel, business has been amazing, right? So I don't know if those are really correlated, or if they're just like something that happens, and I'm just noticing it that way. But for me, a big thing in the evolution of my leadership has been to try to be patient but insistent,
Right.
right? Yeah, patient but not lazy, or not too laid back,
Yeah.
right? That's the kind of balance you need to hit, because if you're too hungry, if you're trying to push everything everywhere all at once, you actually don't get that many things done, right? Pushing clients, pushing investors, pushing your team too much, you can move things away. But at the same time, you can't be too laid back, because if you do things at a normal pace of a normal company, you'll never get anywhere, right? The
Right.
whole point of a startup is that you're doing things with less budget than the other companies, with fewer people than the other companies, with fewer existing clients and case studies to show off. So you have to have an edge somewhere, right?
Yeah.
That edge comes, okay, in your technology, but it also comes in your way of working, right?
Right.
If you are able to outwork the competition, then you have a big advantage to them. So you have to continue to work hard, you have to push, but the ways of pushing and the ways of understanding how to get work done, has to evolve. It's very different when we were, 3, 4 people in a room, and everyone was, getting paid very little money, but super excited, super passionate about doing things. And 10 years on, when you have money, you have revenues, you're hitting profitability, then people ask questions, but you have to fight that urge of falling into, I guess, the trap of becoming a normal corporate, right?
Yeah.
Where people come in for a 9 to 5, for a 9 to 6, They do a certain amount of work every week. That amount of work does not ever go above that. You have to fight that urge, right? And I super respect those companies that have been able to do that and maintain that culture of really working hard and pushing through. It's something you need to learn how to do with while retaining the best people.
Correct. And how do you see the next 10 years look different from the last in fintech and yeah, in the space that you're in right now?
One thing I should say on that last point, actually, which I forgot to say, is a big part of it, which I've learned over time, is helping people understand why, right?
Yeah.
If people understand why they're working on something and you set your culture, so we set our core values about 6 years ago and we followed them. They've been a great blueprint for, who are the kind of hires that work really well and have guided me also for my leadership style. But also, I think one of the things was always helping people understand why. Right now, in some jobs, this is inherent and easy, like in sales, right? You know why you're working hard, why you're making these calls, because then you'll be able to sign this revenue and you have that commission tied to that revenue. But in some jobs, it's not very obvious, right? Like a developer
Yeah.
writing lines of code, you need to encourage as much as possible for every employee to ask why, right? Why is this piece of work so urgent, so important? Why does it need to be done right now? Why do we have to do this? What's the value? Because if they can get on board with the why and they can get on board with what it's going to create for the company and for themselves, right? And have that empathy towards your vision, towards each other and the company's mission, then you get people who are working extremely hard and enjoying working extremely hard.
Correct. Correct. Uh,
On the 10 years in fintech, I
yeah.
think the next 10 years, really difficult to predict. I'm sure that whatever prediction I would have made 10 years ago would have been wrong. Some things, though, were right, like, in-store retail still existing in a big way, cash not being completely scrapped out, those things, because I've realized that the cycles of these things are still much longer than we realized, and especially the long tail is really difficult to get rid of, right?
Mm.
So, you still see, even though there is no reason for most people to use cash, right? You have in the UK so many stores that are accepting card only. Still, in majority of the retailers, more than 95%, they still accept cash, right? And
Yeah.
it's a big cost for them to accept cash. So yeah, over the next few years, I think in 10 years later, we will definitely not see it completely scrapped out, but we will see elimination of payment hardware. So,
Oh, okay.
the payment terminal devices that you see inside the stores, now with NFC payments and PIN on glass and, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and other wallets coming in, I don't see that continuing on, right? An extra piece of hardware, an extra dependency, extra chance of failure of the transaction, and cost to the retailer, not just to buy, but to buy, maintain, and replace. That will certainly go away over
Hmm.
time, right?
Hmm.
We're seeing that amongst our own retailers as well. So it's a whole new area for screens and other tablets to start having NFC capability, and for payments companies to have pin on glass capabilities when you do a contactless card and you need to enter the pin. Again, this is to handle a small percentage of use cases because most of them will use Apple Pay, Google Pay, and you won't need that.
Got it. And
You will
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was also saying that we will also see a lot more further consolidation amongst payments and POS, right,
Hmm.
coming together, like we've seen with Square,
Yeah.
with Clover being acquired by Fiserv, like you have with SumUp as well. This is a trend that I think will continue, right? That payments and POS will become more and more joined, as it was separate before, right? The NCRs were not into payments at all, and the WorldPays and CyberSource were, never into POS. These two things will start to become, a much more joint package for retailers to take on.
Got it. And just to follow up on that, which country or which area do you think is, far ahead or more futuristic than the other, places when it comes to adoption of payments and fintech?
Of course, India for sure is way ahead. China,
Yeah.
right? UK is actually not bad. We're very good when it comes to fintech and payments tech,
Yeah.
way ahead of the US in many ways.
Yeah.
I think also Dubai is
Yeah.
making strong leaps forward, and Saudi. These two markets are growing very, very quickly, and they're leapfrogging in many ways because also they don't have the same regulatory hurdles, and it's very easy for them to bring in new laws that can push these technologies forward. Unfortunately, in the UK, we haven't yet seen that kind of the TFL moment that came with the Olympics, coming in London with contactless cards, right, being accepted and being adopted very easily. We haven't seen that yet with open banking, right? But I do think, like, if you look at UPI in India,
Yeah.
and what it's done, I do see that that will come in. My reasoning for why it's not come in the UK is not just that we haven't had a moment to force it, but also as a user experience, it is inferior to using Apple Pay or Google Pay with just a contactless tap, right? Scanning a QR code on your phone, then going in, then punching an amount, or the amount might be preloaded, but then transferring the amount and going through an OTP is much slower and not
True.
as good a user experience as just doing a Face ID and tapping your phone or your
Mm.
watch. So that's the reason why I think it'll be difficult. So I do see that a new method of doing the open banking protocol will come up, right?
Okay.
That will be more usable in retail, just as user friendly, if not more user friendly than the current wallets we use with NFC enablement.
Got it. And before the call, you talked about how you had moved from London to Dubai, and I've spoken to a few founders who moved from London to Dubai, or or they're looking at Dubai. How, how do you look at Dubai, Middle East uh, as an upcoming startup ecosystem? What do you like and what you don't like about Dubai?
I think it's a very good one. It's growing really, really well. What I love is that the hustle and the hunger is still there. People are willing to work really hard to move towards their goals, and generally because it's such a high percentage of immigrants that are
True.
here, nobody takes it for granted that they're here, right? They're here to work, to build their business, to build their future, and that's what really pushes them to move forward, right?
Mm.
It's sort of what we see with London, not the UK as a whole, but London, just as a small part of the UK, but the most successful part is where you see people coming in. And I feel like we've lost a little bit of that in the last few years, but people don't take it for granted that they've been able to come to London, right? They know that to be there and to be successful there, they have to work hard. I think that's a very inherent thing that you see in places like Dubai and Riyadh, and which is why they're moving forward so fast and why they're so successful. Generally, as a place to start a business, I still think the US is number one,
True.
right? If you can and you have access to be able to start a business in the US, the biggest possible businesses, yes, will still continue to be built there for a few more years, right? I do think that if you then can, India and China are definitely the places to build the next biggest businesses, and they will eventually take over. There will be, that switch happening. It's still a few years away, but yeah, if you have access to the India market, and you can, because India is not as closed as China, but it's still really close. Like, you go into India, in our India team, we've not been able to, even if we wanted to, we can't hire a non-Indian, right? It's not possible because there's just not enough in the market. And for someone new to go in there, although it's an amazing opportunity, great market for talent, it's not so easy to start, right? You can't easily start if you don't know the culture, the language. I mean, everyone speaks English, but still, it's a big difference in
True.
hiring in India, making people work in India, all these things. If you have an advantage through having some, a partner in the market locally, if one of the co-founders is from there, or if you've worked in India extensively before, then you have access to that market. But if you can't do any of these, then I think Dubai is the next best place to start your business now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Super interesting.
So if you don't have access to US, India, or China, then which is the case for most people, unless they're Indian or Chinese, Dubai is actually a very good place to start because you have access to the whole GCC as well as the global markets, right?
Yeah.
Really well, very well connected. You know, low tax ecosystem, easy to start, and the investment ecosystem is growing. It's not, of course, not nearly as big as even the UK, but it is growing very fast.
Correct. And I quickly want to do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
To Pixar and Beyond. It's a book written by the CFO of Pixar in the
Yep.
years that he started there, and towards the launch of Toy Story is where the book ends. But it's a fascinating book. It's not like the others. I love Everything Store and When Genius Failed and a few others. I think somewhere online there's a published list of my 20 favorite sort of business books. But I think To Pixar and Beyond is a very nice story, like the way that he has narrated, joining and then dealing with Steve Jobs there and dealing with all the people at Pixar and just what inspired him. Like the part I loved is at the beginning of the book, he's going through the whole office and everything is like a no, everything is a negative for him, right? He is, it's a longer commute, it's more traffic. The company is not ready, they're not very well funded. They have to get a check from Steve Jobs almost on a month to month basis. So there's no reason for him to join. But they show him a 5 minute clip of Toy Story, which is what they'd built by that time. And then there was nowhere else he wanted to work.
Yeah.
So it's really that, product is over everything else. So if the product is really amazing, you will find a way.
Correct. We'll put that in show notes. And, if you could go back in time when you started building Mishipay, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done things differently?
I would have certainly expanded our product range much earlier, right? We did three major transformations about 2.5 years ago, which have changed the whole company, right?
Okay.
Taken us from processing like 20 million in payments to 200 million in payments in just the last 2.5 years. Because we first expanded the product line from only Scan Pay Go to all forms of in-store innovative checkouts, so self-checkout, RFID self-checkout, mobile POS, including Scan and Go, as well as a new cash register. We expanded the geography, so we added US and we added UAE. That was massive for us. And finally, we also went into payment processing revenue. So we offered payment processing as part of the Mishipay package to our retailers, which made us a lot more competitive on our subscription pricing and allowed us to make more money in the long term with our partners. So I would have done those moves much earlier, right? I don't know when, because 2020 pandemic year, very difficult, but I certainly would have considered expanding the product line if I had to do something differently. I would have done it maybe from 2018, 2019 onwards, as I had some of those early moves. I would have probably saved a lot more through the pandemic, right? I felt like, through the pandemic, we did push on to try to continue to sign retailers because there was interest. But it was exactly that maybe kind of interest that we lost a lot of time and money on. I wonder if it would have been better to just do nothing for 3 to 6 months, keep everything really, really low cost as much as possible, and then emerge from the from the hibernation again to really push when retailers were signing up again very well. So that's something I probably would have done. I would have saved money in 2021 and not spent as much on B2C marketing, which is what we did with our product. But that actually allowed us to learn why Scan and Go on its own cannot expand. But in hindsight, I would say I would spend less. A lot more is about faster decision making towards areas, spending less money to get to where we are. Because I could do it if I started now. I'd be able to get where we are, spending less than half the money that we've spent so far.
Correct. And do you have any favorite online tools, for example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom, anything other than Mishipay?
Anything other than these Gmail, Slack, not any of the G Suite, huh?
It could be G Suite, could be ChatGPT, any tool that you use other than Mishipay.
Other than Mishipay, I like LastPass a lot
Oh, okay.
for my passwords. Very, very useful. I like HubSpot a lot right? Because when we started first time thinking about a CRM, I looked at Salesforce and I was just like, I don't know where to start with this. Like, is this what I have to do? Oh my god! And HubSpot just made it so much easier, right, to get started. And since then, as we've been needing a more and more mature CRM, every time we feel like maybe we should think about a switch, they bring out a new feature that continues to improve their own CRM. So I really think HubSpot has done an amazing job. And of course, all the G Suite tools, the Google Sheets and Google Docs and stuff. Because when we started, Microsoft tools weren't doing that yet. So the fact that you could collaborate together on documents has been amazing for us.
Got it. We'll put that in the show notes. Mustafa, what's the best way people can reach out to you and know more about Mishipay?
So people can just email me, mustafa@mishipay.com,
Okay.
and reach out. They can feel free to also reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or if they have my number, then on WhatsApp.
Got it. We'll put that in the show notes. Mustafa, thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
Thank you, Rohit.